Welcome to our deep dive, into what it really means to be human. We're going to be exploring some pretty fascinating ideas from Yuval Noah Harari's book, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind,
Right.
drawing insights from a book review and some really thought-provoking Goodreads reviews.
Yeah.
Our mission today, uncover Harari's key arguments and see what kind of thought-provoking nuggets we can extract.
It's interesting, that Sapiens became such a massive bestseller.
It really did.
What do you think it is about this book that resonates with so many people?
Yeah, it really seemed to strike a nerve.
Right.
The reviewer even talked about seeing stacks of it everywhere.
Uh-huh.
But here's something I found intriguing. The reviewer points out that Harari's perspective on human history isn't, all sunshine and roses.
Right.
They suggest that humanity's rise to dominance hasn't always been a positive thing, particularly for other species.
Right.
What events in our past led to this kind of complicated relationship with the world around us?
Well, Harari identifies 4 key stages of human history that help explain how we got to where we are today.
Okay.
He begins with what he calls the cognitive revolution.
Okay.
This period marks a turning point where Homo sapiens developed the capacity for abstract thought,
Okay.
the ability to believe in shared myths, and most importantly, the ability to cooperate in large numbers.
That makes sense, but wasn't cooperation always a part of human survival?
Well, yeah.
What made this period so significant?
What sets the cognitive revolution apart is the scale and the complexity of the cooperation that emerged.
Okay.
This wasn't just about small groups working together for immediate survival.
Right.
This was about large-scale collaboration
Okay.
based on shared beliefs and imagined realities.
Hmm.
Things like myths, religions, and social hierarchies.
So you're saying that our ability to imagine and believe in things that don't physically exist
Right.
is a crucial factor in our success as a species.
Absolutely. Harari argues that this capacity for abstract thought was our secret weapon. Think about it. Other animals are limited to reacting to their immediate environment.
Okay.
But humans can imagine things that don't exist,
Uh-huh.
share those imaginings with others, and then work together to make them a reality.
Mhm.
This is what allowed us to build civilizations, create complex social structures, and ultimately dominate the planet.
That's both fascinating and a little unsettling, isn't it?
Yeah.
It suggests that a lot of what we consider real is actually just a product of our collective imagination.
Precisely. And this leads us to Harari's second stage.
Yeah.
The agricultural revolution.
Okay.
Now, conventionally, we think of farming as progress, a positive step in human development.
Right.
But Harari challenges that narrative. He calls it humanity's biggest mistake.
Okay, that definitely goes against the grain of what we're usually taught.
Yeah.
Why would he view it as a mistake?
Because it led to a fundamental shift in our relationship with nature and with ourselves.
Mm.
We went from being nomadic hunter-gatherers living in relative harmony with the natural world to becoming settled farmers tied to the land and the demands of our crops.
Right.
And while agriculture did provide a more stable food supply and allowed for larger populations,
Yeah.
it also came with a whole host of downsides.
What kind of downsides are we talking about here?
Well, think about the physical toll of agricultural labor,
Okay.
the increased risk of famine if crops failed,
Right.
the emergence of social hierarchies and inequality,
Mm.
even the development of infectious diseases that spread more easily in densely populated settlements.
So in a way, by choosing agriculture, we were also choosing a different kind of freedom.
Yeah.
One that traded nomadic liberty for a more predictable but also more demanding existence.
Exactly. And that trade-off continues to shape our lives today.
Right.
We're still grappling with the consequences of that decision,
Hmm.
positive and negative.
Yeah.
Harari then takes us to the third stage,
Oh, okay.
the unification of humankind.
Okay.
This is where we see the rise of empires,
Okay.
money, and organized religion.
And it seems like those are all very different things.
Right.
What connects them in Harari's view?
They are all powerful shared myths.
Okay.
Remember our discussion about how humans are unique in their ability to believe in things that don't physically exist?
Yeah.
Well, money, empires, and religions are prime examples of that.
That's true. Money, for instance, is just paper and metal, but we imbue it with incredible power.
Right.
It drives economies and shapes our decisions every single day.
Exactly. And the same goes for empires and religions.
Mm-hmm.
They're essentially stories that we tell ourselves about power, authority, and the meaning of life.
Mm.
These stories may not be real in a tangible sense,
Right.
but they have a very real impact on our behavior
Yeah.
and the way we organize our societies.
It's a bit like we've constructed our entire civilization on top of a foundation of shared fictions.
That's a powerful way to put it. And this brings us to the fourth and final stage in Harari's framework, the scientific revolution.
Okay.
This is the period we're still living in, and it's characterized by a growing awareness of our own ignorance
Okay.
and a desire to understand the world through observation and experimentation.
But how does the scientific revolution fit into this idea of shared myths?
Right.
Isn't science supposed to be about objective truth, not subjective beliefs?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it gets to the heart of what makes the scientific revolution so unique.
Okay.
Harari argues that, in a way, science is a myth that acknowledges its own limitations. It's based on the understanding that we don't have all the answers
Right.
and that our knowledge is always evolving.
Uh-huh.
But what's fascinating is that even with this awareness of our own fallibility,
Yeah.
science has become an incredibly powerful force in shaping the modern world.
And yet, despite all this progress, Harari seems to suggest that we may not be any happier than our hunter-gatherer ancestors.
Right.
In fact, the reviewer highlights his argument that our modern lifestyle, with its constant striving and escalating expectations, might actually be contributing to our discontent.
That's a really provocative thought, isn't it?
It is. It makes you wonder. If you had to choose between the freedom of that hunter-gatherer lifestyle and the security of modern society, which would you pick?
That's a tough question.
Yeah.
I suppose it depends on what we value most.
Yeah.
Freedom or security, individual autonomy, or collective progress.
Right.
Maybe there's no right or wrong answer,
Yeah.
but the question itself forces us to confront some fundamental assumptions about what constitutes a good life.
This is already making me rethink everything I thought I knew about human history.
Yeah.
It's not just a series of dates and events. It's a story about our evolving relationship with ourselves, with each other, and
Right.
with the world around us.
Exactly. And that story is still being written.
Mm.
What's exciting about Harari's work is that he encourages us to think critically about the narratives we've inherited from the past
Right.
and to consider what new stories we want to create for the future.
That's a really empowering message. It suggests that we have more agency than we might realize.
Yeah.
We're not just passive recipients of history.
Right. We're active participants in shaping it.
Absolutely. And that brings us to one of the most intriguing arguments in Sapiens.
Okay.
Harari contends that the ability to believe in imagined realities is the defining characteristic of our species. This ability allows us to cooperate on a massive scale,
Right.
but it also makes us susceptible to manipulation.
So how do we reconcile those two aspects?
Yeah.
How do we harness the power of belief for good without falling prey to its potential downsides?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's something that we as individuals and as a society
Right.
need to be constantly grappling with. And I think Harari's book provides a valuable framework for understanding the complex interplay
Yeah.
between belief reality and the human experience.
This has been an incredibly thought-provoking start to our deep dive. I'm already seeing things in a new light. Me too. And I'm excited to see what other insights we uncover as we continue our exploration of Sapiens. You know, it's fascinating to consider how these imagined realities, these shared myths, have shaped the course of human history. The reviewer mentioned a particularly striking example from Sapiens, Harari's argument that we domesticated us, not the other way around.
Now that you mention it, I do remember that from the book review. It's such a thought-provoking idea. How could a plant possibly domesticate humans?
It's a brilliant reframing of the agricultural revolution.
Think about it this way. We shifted from a lifestyle of moving, with the seasons foraging for a diverse range of foods,
Right.
to settling in one place, devoting our time and energy to cultivating a single crop.
Okay.
We became tethered to the needs of wheat, dependent on its success for our survival.
So instead of humans asserting their dominance over nature,
Right.
we ended up becoming subservient to it in a way.
Precisely. We became entangled in the demands of agriculture, which led to larger populations, denser settlements.
And the need for complex social structures to manage labor and resources.
It sounds like a Faustian bargain. We gained stability and predictability, but at the cost of our freedom and perhaps even our connection to the natural world.
That's a great analogy. And it's worth noting that this bargain continues to shape our lives today. Think about the vast agricultural systems that feed our world, the intricate supply chains, the environmental impact, the economic and political forces at play. It's all rooted in that initial decision to embrace agriculture.
The reviewer brought up a stark statistic that really drives home the point about our impact on the planet.
Yeah.
Apparently, there are now 20,000 cows for every giraffe on Earth. That's a pretty sobering thought.
It is. It speaks to the profound impact our choices have had on the planet and its other inhabitants. Harari challenges us to consider the ethical implications of our actions, not just for ourselves, but for all life on Earth.
I'm also curious about Harari's idea that history is a process of humans unifying, driven by those shared myths we talked about earlier, money, empires, religion. The Goodreads reviews also seem to find this aspect of the book particularly compelling.
It's a central theme in Sapiens.
Yeah.
Harari argues that these imagined realities have been essential in bringing humans together, enabling us to cooperate on a scale that wouldn't be possible otherwise.
Right.
Think about the Roman Empire, for example.
Right.
It was held together not just by military might, but by a shared belief in the authority of the emperor and the superiority of Roman culture.
So these shared narratives, these myths,
Right.
provide a sense of common purpose, a shared identity that transcends individual differences.
Exactly. But as we've discussed, these shared myths can also be sources of division and conflict.
Yeah.
Think about religious wars, ideological battles, political polarization.
Oh.
These are all examples of how shared beliefs can be used to divide us just as easily as they can unite us.
Which brings us to a rather unsettling question. What happens when those unifying narratives start to break down? We're seeing a rise of nationalism, political polarization, and online echo chambers. Is it possible that we're losing our capacity for shared belief, for finding common ground?
That's a concern that many people share, and it's something that Harari touches on in Sapiens. He doesn't offer any easy answers, but he does encourage us to be aware of the power of these narratives and to think critically about the stories we tell ourselves about the world.
It's like we need to become more conscious of the narratives that are shaping our perceptions, our values, and our actions.
Exactly. We need to ask ourselves, who benefits from these stories? Are they serving us or are we serving them? Are they leading us towards a more just and equitable future, or are they reinforcing existing power structures and divisions?
I love the way Harari weaves together insights from history, biology, anthropology, psychology, and even philosophy. It's such a refreshing approach, don't you think?
It's one of the things that makes Sapiens so compelling. It encourages us to think about the human story in a more holistic way, to see the interconnectedness of our biology, our culture, our technology, and our environment.
It's like he's showing us that to truly understand ourselves, we need to look at the bigger picture, to break free from the confines of our individual disciplines and embrace a more integrated way of thinking.
And to recognize that we're all part of a larger story, one that extends far beyond our individual lives and our limited perspectives. Harari reminds us that we're not just passive recipients of history, we're active participants in its unfolding.
And that brings us to another challenge facing humanity in the 21st century. The rise of artificial intelligence.
Right.
It's a topic that occupies a significant portion of Sapiens. Harari argues that AI has the potential to both liberate and enslave us,
Oh, wow.
depending on the choices we make.
That's a pretty stark contrast. It makes me wonder if we're even equipped to make the right choices when it comes to something as powerful and potentially transformative as AI.
That's a valid concern. One of the things that makes AI so challenging is that it forces us to confront some fundamental questions about what it means to be human.
Right.
If machines can perform tasks that were once considered uniquely human, like writing poetry or composing music, what does that say about our own identity and purpose?
It's a question that's likely to become even more pressing as AI continues to advance. Harari seems to suggest that if we're not careful, we could create a world where machines make all the decisions and humans are relegated to a life of leisure and irrelevance.
It's a dystopian scenario that's been explored in countless science fiction stories.
Yeah.
But it's no longer just a fictional possibility. It's something that we need to start thinking about seriously.
Right.
Are we doing enough to anticipate the potential consequences of AI? Are we having the right conversations about ethics, about safeguards, about the kind of future we want to create with this technology?
Those are crucial questions. And it's encouraging to see that there's a growing awareness of the need for ethical guidelines and responsible development in the field of AI. But there's still a lot of work to be done.
It seems like we're standing at a crossroads with the potential to create a future that's either utopian or dystopian. The choices we make today will have a profound impact on the course of human history.
And those choices will be shaped in part by the stories we tell ourselves about AI, about its potential benefits and risks, about its role in our lives and our societies.
So once again, it comes back to the power of narratives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We need to be mindful of the stories we're telling ourselves about technology, just as we need to be mindful of the stories we're telling ourselves about history, about politics, about ourselves.
This is a lot to absorb. It's making me rethink so many things. What are some of the key insights you've gleaned from our deep dive into Sapiens so far?
One of the biggest takeaways for me is the importance of understanding the role of imagined realities in shaping our world.
Yeah.
These shared myths and beliefs, while not real in a tangible sense, have an immense power to influence our behavior, our societies, and our future.
And it's not enough to simply be aware of these narratives.
Yeah.
We need to be willing to challenge them,
Yeah.
to question their assumptions, and to consider alternative perspectives.
Exactly. We need to develop a critical awareness of the stories we're telling ourselves
Mm.
and to be willing to rewrite those stories when they're no longer serving us.
This deep dive has been incredibly thought-provoking. It's given me a whole new appreciation for the complexity of the human story and the forces that have shaped our past, present, and future. It really is remarkable how these shared narratives, these imagined realities, as Harari calls them, have persisted throughout history. Even as our scientific understanding of the world has advanced, those myths and beliefs continue to hold sway.
It speaks to their enduring power, wouldn't you
Yeah.
say? They provide a sense of meaning, purpose, and belonging that often transcends purely rational explanations.
The book review highlighted another one of Harari's arguments that really struck me. He suggests that the most significant decision in human history was the shift from hunter-gathering to settled agriculture.
That's right. It was a turning point that reshaped our relationship with nature, with each other, and even with ourselves. We traded the freedom and mobility of foraging for the stability and predictability of farming.
But as we discussed earlier, that stability came at a cost. We became tethered to the land dependent on the success of our crops. And that dependence led to larger populations, denser settlements, and the emergence of social hierarchies and inequalities.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? The very thing that allowed us to flourish as a species, our ability to manipulate the natural world to our advantage, also created new vulnerabilities and challenges.
It's like we set in motion a chain of events that we're still grappling with today. The challenges of feeding a growing global population, the environmental impact of modern agriculture, the economic and social disparities that persist in so many parts of the world, these are all echoes of that ancient decision to embrace agriculture.
Harari's perspective encourages us to see the past not as something that's over and done with, but as a living presence that continues to shape our present and influence our future.
It's a reminder that history isn't just a collection of dates and events, it's a dynamic process that we're all participating in.
And as we navigate the complexities of the 21st century, it's crucial to remember that the future is not predetermined. There's no single inevitable path that humanity is destined to follow.
That's both empowering and a bit daunting, isn't it? It means we have the power to shape our destiny, but it also means there are no guarantees. We have to make conscious choices informed by an understanding of the past and a vision for the future.
And those choices will be influenced by the narratives we embrace, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, where we've come from, and where we're going.
It seems like Harari's work is ultimately an invitation to reflect on those narratives, to question their assumptions, and to consider the possibility of crafting new and more empowering stories for ourselves and for humanity as a whole.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about reclaiming our agency, recognizing that we're not just passive passengers on the ship of history, but active navigators charting a course towards a future of our own making.
This has been an incredibly enriching deep dive. It's given me so much to think about. As we wrap up, I want to touch on one final point that's been swirling in my mind. Harari talks about how the scientific revolution, with its emphasis on observation and experimentation, has challenged many traditional beliefs and narratives.
Right. It's shifted our understanding of the world from one based on faith and authority to one grounded in empirical evidence and rational inquiry.
So I'm wondering, what does this mean for the future of belief? Are we headed towards a world where science reigns supreme and those imagined realities gradually fade away? Or will those deep-seated human needs for meaning, purpose, and belonging find new forms of expression?
That's a question that philosophers and social scientists are grappling with right now. It's possible that as our scientific knowledge expands, some traditional beliefs might lose their hold. But it's also likely that those fundamental human needs for connection, for transcendence, for something that gives our lives meaning, will continue to seek outlets even in a world increasingly shaped by science and technology.
Perhaps we'll see a blending of the scientific and the spiritual, a new synthesis that honors both our rational minds and our yearning for something that connects us to something larger than ourselves.
That's a compelling possibility. It suggests that the relationship between science and belief is not necessarily one of conflict, but rather one of ongoing dialogue and evolution.
It's a reminder that the human story is complex and multifaceted, and that our understanding of the world is constantly evolving.
Well said. And that ongoing evolution is what makes the study of history and of ourselves so endlessly fascinating.
I couldn't agree more. This deep dive has left me with a sense of wonder and a renewed curiosity about the world and our place in it. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery. We hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and encouraged you to think critically about the narratives that shape our world. Remember, the story of humanity is still being written, and we all have a role to play in shaping the next chapter. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going. Until next time.